I wanted to be a kid. I'd see my friends playing out in the park and I'd be like, can I go? Not until you read the Financial Times.
Yvonne, welcome to the Femme and Fortune podcast.
When I got to sixth form, I decided on which sixth form I wanted to go to. The sixth form didn't offer economics as a subject. So me being me, I said, I'm going to teach myself A-level economics. So that's exactly what I did. So I'd had my 3 other subjects and then I self-taught economics. Loved it so much. Went on to do economics at university. There was an investor that invested $5K into Uber. And by the time the company went public, that $5K was worth over $23 million. If you invest in a portfolio of 10 companies, you can expect 7 out of those 10 companies to go to zero. So that just shows the extent of the risk.
Yep.
And the idea is that one of those companies will truly break through and be the returner for that entire portfolio. Best entrepreneurs, they always have like a delusional level of ambition. Like it's almost like borderline you're crazy.
Yeah.
Because
you have to be, I think. So, Yvonne, welcome to the Femme and Fortune podcast. I am so excited to have you. I know that there was a bit of back and forth getting this booked in, but I am determined. I want to speak to you.
We made it happen. Thank you for having me.
No, absolute pleasure, as I said. Why don't we kick off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself, like your background and upbringing?
Gosh, how far back do you want me to go?
Start right at the beginning. What I find is oftentimes our earliest influences come from childhood.
Yes, and I think that very much applies to myself. So I'm from Ghana. Well, my parents both, migrated over from Ghana. Grew up in South London in an area called Mitcham in a council estate. And growing up, my parents were pretty much very similar to most African parents. Education.
Did they tell you had to be a doctor?
Doctor, accountant, lawyer, the usual.
Yep.
And it's very interesting actually because growing up we didn't have much. So I have one older sister, there's a 5-year age gap, and she was very much into literature, English, reading, all that kind of stuff. I hated reading growing up. And so my father knew that I was quite numerical. I was quite good with numbers. I have early memories of him doing the abacus with me. Okay. Can't remember exactly how old I was. And one of my earliest memories actually is at the age of 8, he would make me read the Financial Times. He would make me
At 8?
Yes, at 8.
Oh my gosh.
At 8, yes. He would make me read the Financial Times. He would make me read the Economist. And at the time, I just wanted to play out. I wanted to be a kid. I'd see my friends playing out in the park.
Yep.
And I'd be like, can I go? Not until you read the Financial Times. And so growing up, I had this very strong underpinning foundations of financial markets from a very, very early age, like an unusually early age. But what that meant is I think it kind of built in me a real interest within the financial service industry. So although I work in venture today, I had no idea that I would end up in venture. I knew that I would somehow work within the financial service industry. And that was my dream from very early because I would open the Financial Times. And Financial Times is quite a big paper. It's probably bigger than myself. But I would read all these stories about Wall Street and, all these headlines of all these great companies. I was like, this is so interesting. So I always knew that I wanted to work within financial markets. And I guess it instilled in me a belief that I could change the world from a financial perspective. Didn't quite know how, but I knew that I was going to work in finance from a very young age.
I love that because my background has similarities to yours with some differences, but my mum was big on education as well. And also from a young age, she had me, I was reading before I went to school and things like this. And what I realized in hindsight is it's almost conditioning. It's a bit like, Serena and Venus Williams and their dad started really young. I do actually think you need to have obviously some level of intelligence, but it's just starting young.
Yeah.
I think anyone can pretty much do it.
I don't know if you've read the book Outliers, but it speaks about...
I've heard of it though.
Putting in those hours, right? And it really is conditioning from very young. And the amount of hours you put in is what you get out. You see it with footballers, you see it with all sorts of athletes. So I totally agree with you on that.
And I see it a lot in the Black community as well. When I look at individuals who've done well, obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, but when I speak to a few people, one of the common threads that I see is this conditioning from early, and even if it's not necessarily even conscious for the child, but the parent was sort of okay, I'm going to focus on this thing. So how did, I guess, being exposed to sort of finance so early, shape your mindset around sort of money, around ambition and opportunity?
Money, that's an interesting one. So growing up, so my parents split up. I think I was around 8 or 9 when they split up. And so I was always a daddy's girl, very close to my dad. My dad didn't live with us. So on weekends, I'd go to see him. He would treat me and my sister, take us to McDonald's and so on.
Oh my gosh, that's literally my childhood too.
Oh, really?
Yep, same thing. McDonald's, trainers, Super Nintendos.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes.
And I guess his way of treating us with everything happening was he would give me £10 a week. And back then, that was a lot of money. I mean, for a 10-year-old, getting £10 a week, that's a lot of money.
Yep.
And at the time, I used to just spend it on absolute crap, like just frivolously.
Yep.
My first money lesson came when I was 16, actually. So I remember one day my dad was consistently giving me like £10 a week. And this is on top of lunch money. So I'd get my lunch money, I'd get my pocket money, £10 a week. And by the time I got to school, that had grown to like £25 a week. That's a lot of money in a month for a 16-year-old. And I was working as well.
Okay.
One day he was like, I'm not going to give you any money. I'm just going to stop. And I was like, what?
Excuse me? Like, I'm used to the flow.
That for me was my first money lesson because I had just been spending ridiculously. And then one day that income of money just completely stopped. And I actually thought, wow, like, was I meant to save that? I should have been thinking about this more, more seriously. And that was when I learned that actually there's so much value in money and it's not just to be wasted. Because I was buying McDonald's, I was buying like trainers.
Yep.
I don't even know what I spent it on, but every week the money was gone.
Yep.
And so I always say that was my biggest money lesson to date because it was that point that taught me, wow, you actually need to be intentional with how you spend every single pound that comes to you.
Because the flow could suddenly stop and then what are you going to do?
And I think that's the best lesson. He did it intentionally.
So, I mean, at this point you said that you were at school. So what kind of happened next? So you finished, graduated GCSEs, A-levels, then what happened?
Yeah, so I went to university. Interesting story. So again, my father, him being him, I think I was around 13. He introduced me to economics. So I remember actually saying...
That does not surprise me. If you're reading the Financial Times at 8, economics at 13, okay.
I remember him having like a massive textbook on the fundamentals of economics. Okay. I had never been exposed to economics before. And I was like, what is that? What is the concept of economics? What does that actually mean? And it had like all the supply and demand charts and so on. And he was like, I want you to read it. And I was like, why? And interestingly, I actually started reading it and I actually really enjoyed it. And so from a very early age, I knew that I wanted to study economics at university.
Wow.
Very bizarre, I know.
At 13, I mean, I'm thinking, what did I want to do at 13? I went through all kinds of things. Doctor, astronaut.
Oh, I went through all of those earlier as well, like doctor, you name it. At one point, I wanted to be a paramedic. And so I knew that I wanted to study economics. And so when I got to sixth form, I decided on which sixth form I wanted to go to. The sixth form didn't offer economics as a subject. So me being me, I said, I'm going to teach myself A-level economics. So that's exactly what I did. So I'd had my 3 other subjects and then I self-taught economics. Loved it so much. Went on to do economics at university.
Wait, hold on a second. You taught yourself A-level economics?
Yeah. And so what happened was my sixth form that I had selected, they didn't offer it as a subject. And so I went to them and I was like, I really want to do economics. And they're like, you can self-study it. We will provide you with the materials, but we don't actually offer it as a course here. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to self-teach.
Amazing.
myself.
You're actually a woman after my own heart. Like, I have similar stories like this, like, I don't know, doing like several GCSEs like the year before because they're like, oh, you can only do this many per year. And I was like, well, if I do some the year before, then I can do more. You don't meet many people like that. And sometimes when I tell people, they look at me like, oh, she's a bit strange. I'm like, well, you're like me, so I feel better now. Okay, so you taught yourself economics and then you went to university to study economics and you hadn't studied it at inside like an institution like a school.
No, but I loved it. I really did love it. But it caught me by surprise because a lot of the economics that I'd been doing at sixth form was very much theoretical, whereas at university, I felt like my entire course was mathematics. And so didn't really enjoy that so much, but I ended up doing pretty well. So I graduated with a first and then...
Doing pretty well and graduating with a first. I don't think you can get higher than that, can you?
So it was actually pretty pivotal. So at university, so I went to Brunel University And they do they really encourage like placements, internships, that sort of thing. I remember very early on in my time at university, in first year, I had 2 individuals. So Andy AM, who's pretty well known in the startup space, who was a good friend of mine. So I met him first year at uni, but he was 2 years older than me. So he almost became like a mentor.
Okay.
And I remember he got a job at Morgan Stanley and I was like, wow, he's telling me about his salary. I was like, damn, this is great. So from then I was like, right, I need to make it into an investment bank. And that was my goal. So although I had no idea what I wanted to do in financial services, from that point onwards, I was like, I am going to work at an investment bank.
Yep.
Lo and behold, I ended up working at Goldman's, which I know you also did as well.
Yeah, similar story. Yeah.
And I didn't actually enjoy it. So I didn't end up staying for that long. But I would say that, honestly speaking, I think that the perception around investment banking has changed these days. I think a lot more people want to go into tech and there's more broader options available. But for me, it was so pivotal because I just think the training that you get is next to none. And I always say like baptism of fire because it doesn't get any harder than that.
I call it boot camp. It's like, well, I imagine it's like joining an army.
Yeah.
And then they kind of put you through your paces and you find your breaking points in so many things, but it pushes you to know where your limits are. So
you're just like, try me. Nothing can shake me.
Exactly. I remember a time where I was working on a deal and I think I'd been in the office for about 36 hours.
Yeah, no sleep.
No sleep at all. And when I say this to people, they're like, what?
They don't believe it, right?
No, they don't believe it.
They think it's exaggeration.
Exactly. But I remember there was a certain point where someone was talking to me, but I could see their mouth moving, but there was like a delay between my brain registering because it came a bit after. And I remember thinking at that point, okay, I think I need to go to sleep now because,
oh my God,
yeah, there's a slight delay between what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. But I now know that I can stay awake for 36 hours before I start to go a bit doolally. So, and I know that sounds weird, but it means that I know where my limits are, so I can really push myself.
Yeah. And I think one thing for me that is next to none that I took from that experience is resilience. And being in an environment where you may feel uncomfortable, but you've got to push through anyway.
Yep.
And for me, that has played so well in so many other roles that I've been in. And honestly, I encourage everyone to go work in corporate straight out of university if that's what you choose to do. And really just get that experience is next to none.
And the skill sets.
Yeah.
And as you said, like, I think sometimes it's not until later that you just realize how valuable it was. Okay, so you graduated from uni, went to Goldman for a bit. What did you do after that?
Decided to quit. I went traveling. Parents thought I was crazy. They were like,
did your mum cry? Mine cried when I left Goldman, like actual tears. Yeah.
No, mine was just disappointed. She was like, okay, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, you're meant to work to the top, you can make it, you make all this money. And I was just like, look, you told me 2 weeks ago that I'm aging. So I ended up going to Thailand, had a great time there. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. But I think one thing that I learned at university, and I see this in a lot of my peers at the university I went to, is just not being afraid to take risk. And so because of that, even though I didn't know what I was going to do, I had this confidence that things would just work out for itself.
Yep.
And if there's one piece of advice I could give to anyone that's starting out their career, do not be afraid to take risks. Because for me, I knew that banking was not what I wanted to do.
Yep.
Going forward, didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I would figure that out somehow, some way.
You believed in yourself.
And if not, then I always had that to fall back on, right? And so I went traveling. Everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, you're making so much money. Why would you do that? Ended up deciding that I wanted to go into strategy consulting. I really just wanted more exposure with companies. So really enjoyed doing that. But then again, got bored. Ended up working on my own startup for a period of time as well.
Oh, interesting. What were you doing?
So I was trying to build the Bloomberg for Africa, essentially. Okay. So I was really trying to, my whole thing, being an economist and so on, my whole thing at the time, it was around the period where they had the Africa Rising narrative. And I said, look, if we want to unlock more growth for Africa, we need access to better data.
Yep.
And this was back in 2013. So you can imagine access to data just wasn't that great at that time. And so my whole thing is if we can get access to data, more inflows of capital will go onto the continent. So yeah, that was a real baptism of fire. Great experience, but that's what actually propelled me to go into venture.
Being an operator, I guess, and actually doing it for yourself.
And then there was a really strange encounter that I had with an individual on the way to Ghana, actually. And he was telling me about him being in venture. And I was like, this sounds so interesting. So after deciding to step away from the world of startups, I then came back to London. This was 2013, 2014. And I knew that at that point I wanted to break into venture, but there was very few funds at that time in London. And so it was around the time when LinkedIn was just becoming a thing.
Okay.
So I was on LinkedIn messaging every single VC I could come across saying, hey, can we meet for coffee? Would love to meet you. Attending every single event I could come across that had anything to do with venture, and tried to hustle my way in. It took me 2 years before I got a role in venture.
Were you working during that 2-year period?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, been doing that ever since. So 2015. So last year was my 10th year within venture capital.
So tell us a bit about your time during, working for the various different venture capital businesses that you did. Like what was it like? And what are some of the, I guess, differences between some of the firms? As
an investor or?
No, initially as an employee.
Okay, yeah. So I've jumped around quite a bit. So I've done everything from, so my first stint within venture was at Mitsui. That's a Japanese corporate. That took me all over the world. So at any given day I would be in, because it was a Europe, Middle East, Africa role. So any given day I would be in South Africa, or I would be in Lithuania, I would be in Israel. So I really had a global perspective on investing from day one. And yeah, I didn't appreciate that until I'd got further on in my career, and the value of having that real international perspective. I even spent some time living in Japan, which was an absolutely incredible experience. I always say if you haven't been to Japan, you have to go to Japan. Then I did a short stint at a new fund. So it was a very small fund, £5 million called Impact X. I was employee number 1 there. So that was a completely different scale because, Mitsui had hundreds of thousands of employees globally. Impact X, I was one of 4 people in the team. Everything was fully remote before COVID. So we were doing everything on video conference and so on. And being employee number 1 meant that I had a lot of autonomy, a lot of flexibility. So that was a really great experience. And then my most recent stint was at Local Globe, and that's a more established traditional fund. They've got about $2 billion under management. And I think for me, that was probably the peak in terms of my career and I guess learning from the best. And I think that one thing I always say is if you know you want to go on an entrepreneurial path, learn from others that have done the journey before. And that's exactly what I did being at Local Globe. So now I'm on this journey of building my own fund, having been at Local Globe, which is literally one of the best in Europe, made me really hone in on my craft.
Yeah, you've seen firsthand how to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I always say that as well. I think the best experience that you can get is literally learn by doing.
Yeah. And people that have done it in a very great way.
So for anyone who's listening, who's curious about like startup investing and, what it actually involves, how would you describe it?
Yeah. So startup investing is probably one of the most riskiest type of investments that you can make if you look at the spectrum, public market investing and so on. In terms of the way and means that it's done. So as an investor, I will say give you £1,000. In exchange of that, you would give me a percentage equity in your business. And the idea is that at some point in the future, the company, the founder will essentially decide to either sell the business or go public. And at that point, that is where the liquidity event happens and I'll make the money back. It's a long-term game, so it is relatively illiquid compared to other investments. Typical investment horizons these days is 12 to 15 years. So a long time. You've got to have patience. But yeah, the outcomes can be pretty significant.
And then if you were sort of thinking about like traditional investments like stocks and shares, and then for me on the like way riskier end, I always put crypto. Yes. Where would startup investing sit on that spectrum?
Oh, I would say above crypto.
Okay.
Just above crypto. You've got public market, you've got real estate, which falls into the alternative bucket as well. And typically I would say that your alternative bucket of investments shouldn't typically exceed 25% for the average investor. And so venture capital is obviously a smaller portion of that 25% of your overall investment portfolio. And it really depends on your risk appetite and so on, how much liquidity you need. But I think that it is one of the more riskier means of investing.
I guess how should people be looking at startup investing different to other types of investment? So we've spoken about the risk. You've spoken about it being much longer term, like a really long-term investment. Is there anything else that they need to be mindful of?
I think people just need to be aware of the time horizon, but also the fact that whatever you put in, there's no guarantee that you'll make it back, as with any investment. But I think that the potential losses, not necessarily losses, because you're never going to lose more than you've put in, but only put in what you can afford to lose, essentially, because it is very, very risky. Okay,
so I want to ask you, I'll probably come back to this a bit later, but you said so many times it's risky, it's risky, it's risky. So then in my head, I'm like, so why are you so keen to do it? But we'll come back to that.
No risk, no reward.
I like that. What would you say are some of the key things that most people misunderstand about how, about investing in startups and, what's involved?
Yeah, so for the average investor, the loss rate is pretty significant. I think on average, if you invest in a portfolio of 10 companies, you can expect 7 out of those 10 companies to go to zero. So that just shows the extent of the risk. And the idea is that one of those companies will truly break through and be the returner for that entire portfolio.
So it's basically like, let's say you made 10 investments, 7 of those effectively go to zero.
Yes.
You just, you lose all your money. And then it's the remaining 3. I guess the expectation is that one of those or a couple of those will do so well
to make
that they make up for all the money you've lost and then some.
Yeah, so it's pretty skewed in terms of the return potential. But yeah, I love it.
And is it similar when it comes to sort of thinking about this from a VC perspective versus an individual? Is it the same?
I think if you're an individual, I would suggest that don't just dive into startup investing, because I think that startup investing is a game of a few things. So access is a key one. And you want to ensure that you have access to the best companies, which is really key. The other thing is you need to learn how to assess companies. And if you can't do that personally, then you should find, communities to join. So there's various syndicates, for example, that come together, pull their cash together. And then if you are looking to make multiple investments as well, it can be quite time consuming to stay on touch of all those companies and so on. And so there are means in which you could invest in funds, for example, or you can invest collectively as a group and just be a bit more selective with the type of investments that you do. And they do the due diligence on your behalf as well. So I would say that learn from others that have been on the journey before. Don't just jump into it, because you are likely to just lose all your money. And the reality is building a company has become easy as ever. I mean, particularly with AI, anyone can start a company. And so when you're starting out on this journey, and I made this, mistake when I first started out, I just thought, wow, this sounds so interesting. I'm going to invest. But there's so much more to it than this sounds amazing.
What would you say is the thing that would surprise people most about investing in startups? Other than like the high risk and the loss, is there anything else?
I think one of my biggest learnings quite early on in my career was I focused so much on the idea. But the reality is, as I've developed more experience, I've done more investments, I've come to realize it's always about the founder. And it's really a people business. Some VCs don't agree with that. Some people have a different approach. But personally, I've seen time and time again that if you invest in really exceptional founders, they will figure it out. Because the thing is with great ideas, you can think something is great and, on paper it sounds great, but until the product is launched in market, you've truly tried and tested it, you just don't know. And so if you back people, you really take the bet on the individual. That's where I think you're making a safer bet, because really exceptional people will just figure it out somehow. Yeah.
So what is it that you look for in a founder? When you say really exceptional people will figure it out, I assume it's more than like academics, what university you went to, things like that. So what is it you look for?
Yeah, the golden question.
Tell us all so we can go and find them and make some money.
It's really funny, actually, because as I've been on this fundraising journey for the fund, a lot of investors, when they become very successful, they often say, oh, it's gut feeling, it's intuition. And what I've tried to do is really actually understand what it is. What is that gut feeling? What is it? What are the signals that I like to see in founders that really drive me to make an investment? And I think it's a few things. So one of them is, you'll find that with a lot of and I was actually listening to another podcast earlier today where it had one of the founders of Andreessen Horowitz, and he was talking about what he likes to see in founders. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I like to see in founders. I was like, I'm doing something right. But I think it's, so reality is building a startup is incredibly hard. Like,
I know.
Some days it's like bricks are being thrown at you, right? Yep. And so for me, one of the key things that I'm looking for is people who are just deeply obsessive about what they're building. And there has to be something that's driving them beyond the money alone. Because if you want money, there are so many ways to make money. And bricks being thrown at you every other day is not the way to do it. So one of the things I always love to understand is, what is it that wakes you up in the morning? What is it that is driving you to do this? Sometimes that could be a chip on the shoulder. Sometimes it's that, you know, the founder wants to prove themselves to others. They've gone through hardship, or it could be that they're just deeply obsessive about the customer base that they're trying to sell for. They've been through a personal problem that, you know, hits them in a deep way, that they feel like they are the only ones that can build and solve for that issue. It takes an audacious level of ambition, because to set out, say you're going to build something from nothing and actually do it, I think takes a lot of guts. And oftentimes I find that, you know, some of the best entrepreneurs, they always have like a delusional level of ambition. Like it's almost like borderline, you're crazy. Because
you have to be, I think.
Yeah, because I think if you think about it, in venture, you're trying to create a world that doesn't exist. You're reshaping entire industries. I mean, if you think about some of the greatest companies that exist today, I always use the example of Uber, because I cannot imagine life without Uber. But if you think about life pre-Uber, we used to go to cab stations physically.
And wait, and they'd radio.
And wait. Or we would sit at home and wait for someone to come. Now, a click of a button, I can get an Uber within a few minutes. That has reshaped the way in which we do things entirely. And that is exactly what venture tries to achieve, like trying to back entrepreneurs that are truly going to reshape entire industries. And that does take a level of delusion, because you're trying to create a world that doesn't exist today. And you have to find a way to do it.
And also, I think, because we know that so many startups fail, as a founder, you have to have that irrational belief. So my husband always reminds me, he's like, you remember, right? Most startups fail, but not mine. Not mine. I'm like, that's other people, yeah, but not mine.
Exactly that. And so that irrational level of ambition is really important. Something that always strikes me as well is founders that have maybe had quite an unconventional background. So I'm actually less drawn to like the academics and, you know, I've worked at all these prestigious companies. Oftentimes the founders that I back have had a really unconventional experience, or they've come from a really unconventional background, and they're just so obsessive with solving the problem. Finally, I'd say storytelling. I think storytelling is something that is so key as an entrepreneur. You're constantly having to sell to potential employees, investors, customers. So the ability to share that vision to various audiences is really key. I think that's something that may not necessarily come naturally. I think it's something that could be developed. But yeah, they're just a few of the key things I look for.
So have you ever been wrong with a founder? And if you have, what was it that either you missed, or what did you think they had, but they actually didn't?
In venture, you learn from your losses. So I've been wrong multiple times. And I think one of the key mistakes that I made earlier on in the journey was focusing so much on the market. And the size of the market. So, for example, a market may appear to be small today, but I always find that the best entrepreneurs create a market. And so they will expand on something bigger than what it is today. So that's where I've been wrong. The other thing I think is solo founders. So originally when I started out and the market's completely changed, I was like, I'm not going to back solo founders. In recent years, I've probably backed more solo founders than teams.
Interesting. Okay.
And my whole perception on that has changed. I wouldn't say that I outright favor solo founders because I think that having a co-founder does come with its benefits, but I don't share this blanket view of I'm not doing solo founders, because actually I think there could be a strength in that you can execute quicker, as long as you have support around you.
And a strong team.
And a strong executive team, it doesn't really make a difference in my experience.
It's interesting you say that, because I mean, I am a solo founder. And I think when I was fundraising, particularly in the early days, one of the questions I always got was, but you're a solo founder, you know, what if something were to happen?
Yeah.
Or you're
what
also,
if you get hit by a bus?
Yeah, you're also a mom. Like, what if you decide to spend more time with your kids? The questions like this. And I think what it showed for me with hindsight is they're not the right investors for me.
Yeah.
If you don't know my determination, my hustle, my drive, then, and you can't see that, then you're probably not the right investor. I can see that now, but obviously at the time I was like, another no. But again, it teaches you all about resilience.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that obviously, or I guess not obviously, but you mentioned that if somebody has a portfolio of investments and they're investing in startups, majority of them are going to go to zero. So you're not thinking individually, it is like a portfolio approach. So how does that shape, or how should that shape people's decision making?
Interesting question. I think for myself, when I'm looking at investments, I do look at it very much from an individual perspective. Like, is this company a company that I'm excited about? Is this founder one that I want to partner with for the next decade or so, however long they're going to be on this journey for? That's my first decision. And then I'm thinking about it from a portfolio perspective. For example, one thing I don't want to do ideally is invest in companies competing against each other, because I'm someone that loves to pour so much into the companies I back. And I think where companies are competing, you can find yourself maybe in situations where you're having to do something for one company and then not giving the same to another. So I think that can be challenging. We're seeing more and more funds actually invest in competing companies.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's not something that I would like to do.
Yeah.
And then maybe from a risk perspective as well, like, do you want to be doubled down on certain sectors? Because reality is sectors can come in flux and out. We saw during COVID, like blockchain and sort of the meme coins being a big thing, that went to zero. And so, there can be trends that come and go, and you don't want to be over-indexed in one particular segment where it may go completely out of flux.
So you're essentially saying that although the whole, I guess, philosophy of investing in startups is looking for the one or two big wins, you still should sort of diversify the investments that you're making and spread risk there. But I guess fundamentally, the whole nature of startup investing is looking for those one or two big outliers, which I think is completely contradictory to traditional investing, right? If you have stocks and shares, the idea is you have a really diversified basket. It's about slow and steady, little increments over time. Whereas with startup investing, it's like you're looking for the go big or go home thing.
Exactly that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've spoken a lot about the various different risks that are involved. So why are you so keen to, I guess, double down on this industry, by creating your own fund? Because if our investments are by their nature very risky, doesn't that mean that your business for yourself is very risky?
It is risky, but like I said earlier, no risk, no reward. And I think I've witnessed firsthand the power of venture. So I've been very fortunate to have invested in some really, really incredible companies. And for me, what I always remind myself of is some of the most richest individuals that we know of today have built their wealth from technology. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, they have fundamentally reshaped the way in which we do things. And for me, that is one aspect that I truly love about it. The fact that someone can have an idea in their head one day, and then 5 years down the line, this thing becomes something that the whole world is using, which is insane when you think about it. But I've seen it happen firsthand. And when that does happen, the reward really does pay off. And so while it is very risky, I think the rewards of that really do pay off.
So it's the rewards that kind of lure you. And I completely get that. So like I'm an avid angel investor.
Right.
So I invest in a lot of startups. And like you said earlier, I go in knowing that in a lot of cases, my money could go to zero, or not zero, because I typically only invest in SEIS or EIS startups, but still it's effectively losing like a significant portion of my investment. But if you get one of the ones that goes right,
I mean,
life-changing.
Revolut has made a lot of people money.
Yep. And that's the thing. So when I look at it, it's like, okay, yes, very high risk. Yes, I know that I'm going to lose on most of these. But if I can just find those one or two, they can change your life.
Yeah. And I think just to put it into perspective, so there was an investor that invested 5K into Uber. And by the time the company went public, that 5K was worth over $23 million. And so
I need one of those. I need one of those in my life.
In terms of the potential upside, it's just, it pays off if you get into the right companies, like you said.
So I guess the question which most people will probably be asking is like, how do you try and make sure that you have one? Because it's sort of like, okay, we're saying like, if you find a one, then that's it, you've made it. But how do you try and find the one? So we've spoken about the founder, and you sort of saying that you think that is the most critical thing. Like, what else do we need to be looking at when we're looking at startups and companies, when we're trying to find those, those gems?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not something that you do as your day job, then I think that trying to stay on top of markets, trends can be quite challenging. And that's where I think that there are syndicates, there are communities out there that you can be part of where you can make collective decisions. If it's something that you do want to do proactively, like yourself, you angel invest, then I think honestly, my biggest learnings came from my losses. So you've got to be comfortable with making losses, and you learn way more from your losses than you do from your wins. So I would say get comfortable with losing money, but not everyone is afforded with the ability to do that.
Although like there are like crowdfunding platforms now where they have really brought the entry level of investing in startups like down to I think as low as £1,000. But I agree with you. I think you learn by doing. And when I think back to the very first investments I made, I've told the story before. The very first investment I made was £80,000. Wow, wild! Because I didn't know better. Because I didn't know better. It was somebody that I knew had an idea. And I was really excited, and he was raising, and he's like, oh, I need a lead. I need someone to anchor it. And so, yeah, why not? Would I do that now? Probably not. Now these days, like the biggest I invest, if it's something that I really like, is probably, I don't know, 20, 30K, because also I save money to invest later when they do later rounds. Whereas the first time I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily for me, it was SEIS. So I got most of the money back. But I learned, like I would never do that again. No. Something else I used to do is look at who else was investing. Yeah. Oh. And if there were like big names or things like that, I'm like, oh, well.
I was guilty of doing the same. And I'll be like, oh, this great fund is invested. It must be a great company.
Yeah, same. I've learned that lesson. Doesn't matter who else is investing. Doesn't matter if they are some kind of superstar. Don't assume that they've done the homework. You have to do it for yourself. So do you think that this kind of investing is something that everyone should be doing, or is for like a particular type of investor?
I think it depends on your risk appetite. I mean, I've invested in companies where I've had angels come in alongside myself, and they're sending messages to the founder every month saying, what's happening with the company? Like, where are you today?
Those are nightmare investors.
And I mean, as a founder, you can probably relate to that not being ideal, because you just want to be heads down, get on with building. So if you're not comfortable with the long-term aspect of the asset class, and the fact that it does take time, oftentimes even the most successful companies that we know of today, they've had really significant bumps and hurdles along their way, and it's part of the journey. And so, you've got to be comfortable with the risk. You've got to be comfortable with the fact that it is a long-term game, and you also got to be comfortable with the fact that it could just go to zero, and that's okay. So again, you should only put in what you can afford to lose.
So tell us about one of the winners. I think you were involved in Marshmallow, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that.
So yes, invested in Marshmallow in 2019. So at the time, 2 twin founders, they were early 20s when I met them. It was really interesting because they were building in the insurance space, highly regulated industry. The two of them had no insurance market experience. So on paper,
what was it that you saw in them that you were like,
because on paper, just doesn't make sense. Highly regulated industry, no experience within the space. And the fact that if you look at the motor insurance space that they're operating in, there are some really, really big incumbents like Admiral and so on. And with the two of them, I remember the first time I met them, it was in the WeWork office, very small office space. And what really sparked my interest was the fact that, so essentially what they do is provide insurance predominantly for migrants and high-risk drivers and so on. And the idea is that because they're incorporating alternative data, they're able to provide better pricing. At the time when I met them, they were almost so frustrated they were just so frustrated at the fact that migrants would come into the country and will automatically be priced at 4 or 5 times higher than your average driver, just simply because insurance companies were too lazy to get alternative data on them. And so they really were driven to solve this problem. And one thing that really impressed me about them was the fact that they knew they didn't have insurance industry experience. So they filled that gap in. They brought on board insurance industry veterans very early on in their journey. And so that to me was like signs that they were great storytellers. It proved their ability to know where their gaps were in that they didn't have that insurance market expertise. They brought on board those experts that essentially brought that to the team. And also the fact that they went and they spoke to over 50 potential customers, just truly trying to understand what the issue was, all before raising money. And so a lot of entrepreneurs I meet often say, I need to raise money before I can even start working on this business. But reality is you can validate, you can be resourceful and prove that out before you even raise the money. And especially in this AI age where you can spin up a prototype very easily or a beta version of the app. And so that was what I saw at the time. And they're now worth $2 billion, growing rapidly. So that's one success story.
And how early did you get into that? And which fund? You were working at a fund at the time,
so
right?
I was at ImpactX. So it was one of my first investments that I made there, actually. And that was back in 2019. And that was quite early in their journey. I mean, I think they were just about looking to launch at the time. Yeah, it was very, very early in their journey.
Yeah, so I definitely call that a gem.
But that is venture. It's about finding those diamonds in the rough. Yeah.
So, and I mean, one of the other things that comes up quite a lot when I sort of think about the startup space is, first of all, that it just seems to be so much more topical now. So many more people are talking about, I want to invest in startups. I want to be an angel investor. Like, how do I go about it? But I still find that there aren't as many women.
Oh, my biggest frustration,
as men. So why don't we see more women, investing in startups, whether it be, at the sort of VC level or at angel investing?
When I know the answer to that. I mean, the reality is, even when it comes to female founders, I mean, the data is pretty stark, right? So still only 2% of venture capital funding goes to women.
2%.
Yeah, 2%. And then for mixed teams where there's a woman on the team, I think it's like 8 to 10%. And so that in itself is a challenge. I think that when it comes to even beyond venture capital investing, and I'm sure you can speak a lot on this, women, I think, tend to invest less than men. I think there's more risk aversion there. It's something that I've been keen to change, but it's changing, but very slowly.
Yeah, I think I speak to a lot of people about this. I think one of the biggest hurdles for women when it comes to investing generally is confidence, lack of confidence. One of the factors of that is like financial knowledge and just understanding the jargon and, I'm not sure what I'm doing, that kind of thing. But I've also seen incredibly intelligent, highly articulate women who are absolute bosses at work, but But when it comes to investing, they're still a bit like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And I lump it all together and I'm like, it's just confidence.
I do think that representation is also a key part. I mean, what I've seen is with the women that I know invest, a lot of them invest because they see their peers investing, like they see other women investing, like, oh, I can do this. So for example, with the fund that I'm raising at the moment, one of the LPs is a woman.
So this is somebody who's effectively investing in your new fund.
Exactly. Yeah. And she, said, I'm going to connect you to my friend. She is also a woman.
Yep.
And I think the fact that she saw her friend doing it, she was like, oh, I'm going to do this too. And so I think representation is a key piece. And I think that we just haven't had, I mean, even when it gets to scale, we haven't had that many women actually raise capital. And so it almost creates this cycle whereby we don't have many women achieving that sort of scale when it comes to, really growing and exiting companies. So we don't have them becoming significant angel investors. And then that means that, data shows that women are more likely to investing in women. And so we're not having that cycle of women actually going on to then invest or reinvest the wealth creation.
So the cycle doesn't really change that much. I guess, are you a bit optimistic? Do you think it's going to change? Because like women are earning more. They're, building careers now, building businesses. Like, do you think change is on the horizon?
I think there is change. I mean, I started out in this industry back in 2015, so over 10 years ago. Things have definitely changed, but the pace of change is painfully slow. I would love to see more women, involved in this asset class. And again, I always share the fact that some of the most richest individuals in this world today have created their wealth from the world of tech. As company builders, as investors, we need more of that. And I think representation truly does matter. And so when I see women, building companies, investing, I'm like, this is great because you are showing other women that this can be done and it's not scary. So yeah, we just need more.
So one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that this is a very, very risky sector.
Probably not helping, am I?
Then you also mentioned that women, or it's often thought by many that women are more risk averse. How do we then get more women investing in this if we know it's risky and we know that there might be that aversion? Like how do we de-risk it?
The reality is the asset class is risky. However, I think it's about taking calculated risks. So investing in how much you can afford to potentially lose, equipping women with knowledge. So that's why, there's various angel schools now that exist that really help upskill women when it comes to angel investing, which I think is really incredible to fill in that knowledge gap. And then I think the other thing is just seeing other women doing it as well. I think if we could have more of that, then I think women will get more comfortable with the idea of investing. And this, like I said, it's not just venture capital as an asset class that this applies to. I think we see it across all asset classes where we need to see more representation. And I think that where we see more examples of women doing it successfully at scale, that will increasingly change.
And I think it applies both to women who work in VC and also women who are founders. And then also women who might be angel investors. I think we just need to see more across the board, which is why what you're doing is phenomenal. I don't know many female sort of founded VCs here, tiny handful.
Yeah, since I started out, there's a lot more. Reality is the data actually shows that women are more likely to invest in women founders. And so again, that's why I think that 2% figure of how much funding gets to women, if we were to have more women investors, I do think that also moves the needle. So again, it's almost this cycle whereby we need more women investors. That will go into there being more funded females. And then it's an ongoing cycle.
Yeah. So we basically need to help women become more confident with the sector, whether it's through education, it's through learning by doing, it's through access, it's through networks. Once we can do that, that should sort of trickle along to the next part of the circle, and then it kind of just effectively spins by itself. So yeah, we've got some work to do.
On it.
So what I want to talk about now is when you look at who gets funded and who doesn't, what do you think the industry is still getting wrong?
Oh, look, the reality is, so I remember in 2020, I was very frustrated with the way in which I saw things going in the industry. That frustration came from a place of thinking there's a lot of bias. I'd seen it firsthand. A certain archetype of founders tend to get funded time and time and time again. But I think since then, what I've come to realize is people invest, and I'm even guilty of this, people invest in what they know. People invest in people who they can resonate with, come from a similar background to them, who, you know, are similar to them in different forms and ways. And so the reality is, if we want to see more women funded, if we want to see more Black founders funded, we need to have more Black investors. We need to have more women investors. That is truly the reality. The bias exists, but I think everyone has their own bias. And not a lot of people are going to agree with this, but that is my take as of today.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think part of the problem is that the bias is unconscious. So it's much harder to solve a problem when people can't see the problem. And I'm going to say something a bit controversial. I kind of, it's a bit like with racism, right? I would much rather deal with somebody who is just outwardly and openly racist, because at least I know you're racist, you know you're racist, and you don't seem to care.
Right.
But at least everyone knows where they stand. The issue is when you have someone who's racist, who doesn't even realize it, doesn't even think they are. I actually think that's more dangerous.
Yes.
And I it's a bit similar with this. If they don't recognize their biases and what they're doing, how can the problem ever be solved?
Yeah. And honestly, it's a battle that I tried to take on back in 2020. And then I just realized we just need to get more representation across the industry as a whole, because the reality is those biases exist. A lot of it is unconscious. And so that in itself is a very steep uphill battle that, you know, it's very difficult to make someone recognize their biases.
I'm not sure we can.
Exactly.
I think part of it is human nature.
Exactly.
It's like what you said, you're just naturally drawn to people that you click with.
Exactly that.
You get, that you resonate with. And that's more likely to happen to somebody that you have similarities with, whether it's background or whatever it is. And I don't think this just applies to like the VC or the investing world. Like I've seen it pretty much in every other sector that I've looked at as well. Like even when I was in banking, I remember the way that we used to be sort of ranked and given our bonuses, you'd have to get different people to write a review for you. But then you'd sort of see like certain groups of people who stick together would always give each other like the best reviews. And why are they even doing that? Well, because they click, they get on, they're from the same place, or they went to the same university. So I've seen it play out in so many different arenas that part of me is like, I'm not sure we can overcome those biases.
Exactly that.
So then the only other way to solve the problem is what you said. It's if we want to get more female founders funded, we have to have more women investing.
Exactly that.
If we want to get more Black founders funded, we have to have more Black investors. I think we should still keep beating the other drum just for awareness, just so that maybe occasionally people check themselves in the terms of, oh, I'm thinking I'm going to make this investment, but do I have any unconscious biases? At least think about it, even if you're not going to, make the change. But yeah, I think the more we talk about it and the more we put it out there and we identify what the levers are that we can actually pull, then maybe we can get some change. Yeah,
and I have quite a controversial view on this because, for years I tried to speak on this and I realized that actually it's a real uphill battle. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a battle that shouldn't be fought. But I just thought to myself, actually, if I want the change to happen, I've got to be the change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that the biases exist. And the reality is, as much as you bang that drum, sometimes they're just not going to be recognized. And so sometimes just be the change that you want to see.
Yep. And also I've realized that sometimes you can't make that change or be that change day one. Sometimes you have to go down a different path. and maybe, I don't know, acquire more of a voice, more power, more influence, whatever it is, and change that thing later. I used to have this bee in my bonnet where I saw something unjust. That is not fair. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that. And now what I've realized is, you know what? I can't fix this right now. Doesn't matter how hard I want to fix that. But if I can get to here and in this position, then I am coming back and I'm going to fix this thing.
That is exactly where I've got to.
Yeah, same. And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's taken me 8 years. Like, I wish I'd realized this 8 years ago, because I have been banging my head against certain walls. Like, this is going to change. This is going to change. And then recently I'm like, you know what? This is not going to change. It's not going to change right now. I need to go and
for your own sanity as well. You're like, do you know what? Yep. Not one for today.
Exactly.
We're still going to fight.
I'll go do this. Later, I will come back to that when I have more tools in my toolbox, more support, more knowledge. And I think it's important sometimes for people to recognize that, because sometimes you can feel like a failure, like, or like you're kind of maybe like selling out, like, it's a problem, but I'm not going to fix that anymore. I'm moving over here. It's not like that. It's just, you just realize that maybe like now is not the time.
Yeah. Timing.
Exactly. So if someone is interested in early stage investing, but they feel unsure about, what to do, like, what is it that you would want them to understand?
I would suggest exploring the SEIS scheme. So that's the Seed Enterprise Investing Scheme. I think that reason being is there's some great tax incentivizations from that scheme. I'm happy to go into more details. The other thing I would say is join a community.
Yep.
You don't have to do this alone. Learn from others mistakes. I didn't do that, and I wish I did in hindsight. Yep. So there's so many syndicate, angel investing groups out there today that you can join and be a part of. The best thing you can do is learning from others' mistakes that have gone the journey before, and you don't have to make those mistakes because they've done it already.
Yep. So basically, you don't have to be an expert.
No.
Like, there are things around you, whether it's, as you mentioned, the syndicates, the networks, the education that's available to, I guess, give you that kind of support. Now, when people are thinking about investing in startups, obviously there is the angel investing route that we've spoken about, where, you invest your money in that company and they give you equity. But for those people who are wealthier, who have some money, they could potentially invest directly into a fund, right? How does that work?
Yeah, so investing in a fund, I think a lot of people invest. So I've actually spoken to a lot of investors that previously were investing direct, and now they're like, do you know what? Done it. Just don't have the time for that. I'm going to invest in a fund and someone that could actually do it on my behalf. And so investing in a fund is something that is pretty opaque because, for regulatory reasons, it's not something that could be widely advertised. But what it does mean is, you are typically going to put that money into a manager of that fund that has the experience, has the time, because they're typically dedicating their entire career, work life to assessing startups. And they probably have a lot more expertise within a particular domain. They're probably seeing a lot more startups. So from the perspective of they're seeing what's on the broader market, which if you're not doing it full time, you probably won't have the capacity to do, or if you're not dedicating a lot of time to it. So I think there's many benefits that come from investing in the fund.
Okay.
And the diversification as well, because when you're investing in the fund, they're going to invest in
lots of different startups,
lots of different companies. And so you're not taking on the risk of just investing in one company direct. You're taking on a broader portfolio. And
I guess you're just taking on the risk of that fund manager, right?
Exactly.
You're backing that person or company or people to be making the right decisions and picking the right, companies to invest in on your behalf. Now, in terms of your own wealth building journey, so, you were at Goldman, you did a stint in consulting, you obviously went into VC. Would you say that, the bulk of your wealth building journey has been completed, or this is kind of where you see it coming from now with your own fund?
Really interesting, because when I think about wealth, I actually think about it from a household perspective. So I myself have no interest in property. My husband loves property.
Okay.
I invest in stocks, but it's not something that I'm crazy about. My husband loves investing in stocks. So from a diversification perspective, we had a lot of household diversification, because I've probably invested a lot of my excess cash in startups. And so we need that diversification from a household perspective. If he was doing the same, then maybe that wouldn't be the smartest thing to do. So from that perspective, we are pretty diversified.
But you as an individual, would you say? Yeah, same with me actually. It's funny because sometimes I'm like beating the diversification drum. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And people say, okay, where's your money invested? Yeah, property and startups. Look at the floor. But that's me. Like, that's my risk profile. But I guess you're similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely just love it. So I remember in 2020 is probably when I really ramped up my angel investing. Yeah. Any excess cash I had, I would put it into a company. And I have a small proportion in like stocks and shares, ISAs and so on. But for me, because I've had the privilege of seeing the potential upside and what you can truly achieve, because I do it day to day, I meet a lot of startups. That is what I love doing. That's what I like to focus my time and energy into. And I have the ability to do it as well. Yeah. So my husband, on the other hand, has no interest in startup investing, which is great because it means we diversify as a household. Yeah. He loves investing in property. He loves investing in stocks. He loves investing in like non-tech startup companies as well. But I think thinking about that household diversification is really important. I don't think a lot of people actually think about that. And actually, what I say to a lot of people is I think that historically, particularly within my community, our community, I think a lot of people are comfortable with property investing. What I'm always trying to say is you should diversify even a small proportion away from that, because reality is wealth is being created within the world of tech. And even just having a small proportion in that, if you could, upskill, get knowledgeable on that space, I think could be highly beneficial.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think the reason why, I started out purely in property and then moved over to look at, investing in startups as well. And for me, it was because I saw what you saw. If you find those gems, you can generate enormous wealth, like life-changing sums. And I just didn't see how my ISA was going to do that. So I was like, okay, I need the ISA because I do need like a fallback. I need, slow and steady, build some wealth in the background so that a rainy day comes, like I'm going to be okay. But okay wasn't enough for me.
Right.
I'm like, I am shooting for the moon. So how do I build outsized wealth? You do that through, in my opinion, through companies. Okay, I can't start and run, 100 companies, but I can invest in other people who are doing that and get a slice of their pie. And like we've said repeatedly throughout this conversation, yes, it is risky. So I always make sure that the money I'm investing, I can afford to lose. But I am also counting on those winners. And I'm lucky enough to say that I've got a couple of them in my portfolio. So that £80,000 I lost day one, whatever. First of all, it wasn't 80, as I said, it was SEIS. So I got most of it back. So I don't know, I think probably got about 80% of it back. So I lost 20% of it.
Really
in the grand scheme of things, not a big deal. But I continued. And so now I have these, potential winners. So last question. It's more about having your own business. You could have, stayed with a fund or joined another fund. Why start your own? End on a good one.
So for me, I've always wanted to build my own. Part of it is having the autonomy. Part of it is that when you work at other funds, you are having to go under other people's visions. And sometimes, you can see the world differently. And so part of the reason why I decided to step out and do this fund was, I've been doing this for over 10 years. I had very high conviction in my ability to invest and source really great companies, find companies that are going to be breakout companies. And so I just felt it was time to take the bet on myself. I could have stayed at the fund where I was before. I was on a very good salary. And people are like, you're crazy. It's the toughest market ever to raise a fund. What are you doing? But the reality is, I feel like in life, you sometimes just have to take a bet on yourself. It's almost like that founder delusion. I've got that delusion I'm setting out to.
I mean, I'd say you've kind of got it double, because not only are you starting your own business, so you are now a solo entrepreneur, but now you also have to find the other companies to invest in. that are going to do well as well. So it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's not kind of, it is being a solo founder, but now also having to go and find other people who are doing that so that you can invest in. But I think delusional, crazy, that's how games are changed. That's how, in my opinion, you know, we shift the needle and things happen. If everyone played it safe all the time, I don't think there'd be half the inventions or the things that we had. There'd be no Ubers or Deliveroos, which I definitely need in my life. otherwise we don't eat. Like it's so needed.
Yeah. And I think throughout my career, I've never been afraid to take risks. So I left investment banking, I've left various roles. And what's the worst that could happen? That's why I was speaking to a friend earlier and she was like, I want to start this company. I was like, just do it. What have you got to lose? The reality is, I think that a lot of us were so fearful of what could go wrong, but actually we should be thinking,
what could go right?
Goes right, what could happen then? And so I think for me, I've decided to step out on this journey. It's not easy. I always say you choose your hard. And this is the hard journey I've decided to take. And worst case, I'll get a job if I need to.
But do you think that you're able to make these choices because you have a level of financial security already? Like if you, I don't know, had just come out of uni, didn't really have any money or anything, like would you still be like, yeah, I'm still going to back myself and still going to choose the risky option?
That's the perfect time. You have no risk. I have 2 kids, right? And I always say that, you know, me deciding to leave my role, deciding to go traveling, all the career jumps and moves that I made, I did that early on in my career because I was living at home. I didn't have many responsibilities, didn't have kids at the time. The stakes for me are higher now because I've got 2 kids and they got to eat. And, you know, my husband is great. He's really supportive and, you know, he's really backing me on this journey because, starting a fund is not easy. But
I guess you must still have some level of security because otherwise, I don't know, do you?
I mean, it's taken a lot of risk. Setting out to do this, I obviously had to make some contingency to ensure that, you know, I'm not going to go broke in this process. But that is why, especially if you are privileged to not have as much risk, like have no children, you don't have a mortgage to cover, then that is the best time. I always say like 20s, you should be taking as much risk as you can.
And I'd say even like 30s and potentially early 40s. I read somewhere recently that the average age of an entrepreneur is like in their 40s.
Yeah, 40s, 50s.
Which blew my mind.
Exactly, because a lot of people, they think startups and companies and they think, oh, people start in their 20s. But reality is the best entrepreneurs, the actual success age tends to be in their 50s. And so it's never too late. And I would say, what's the absolute worst that can happen? Yes, we're in... Who knows what's going to happen to the economy right now? Let's not touch on that. But I always feel like things always work out for themselves as well. I think that, you know, if you don't take a bet on yourself, then that's a bigger risk because then you're always going to question, what if I did this? What if I, you know, took that leap and decided to do it? I think there's a bigger risk in not taking that leap rather than taking it, because at the end of the day, what is the worst that could happen?
Yeah. And also not having the regrets to, if only, I should have, could have, what would have happened. I think it's much better to jump.
Yes.
And then to see what happens and to figure it out. Clearly, like, we're not talking about like jumping and knowing you're going to go splat. Obviously not. Like, you need to have some kind of idea of what you think is going to happen, or to the biggest extent possible, make sure you do have some kind of safety net. But I think absolutely we have to keep leaping and keep backing ourselves and taking that leap of faith. Otherwise, if you always play it safe, you're never gonna do what I call, or be, in my opinion, great, or be phenomenal, or really take it to that next level, because then you're always playing it safe.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of just taking a bet on yourself, go for it. What is the worst that could happen?
I love that. Okay, so at the end of all my conversations, I do something that I call the Femme and Fortune 5.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, like really fast, quick fire. And I want you to give me the first thing that comes into your head.
Oh gosh, okay.
Okay, right. So number one, backing the idea or backing the founder?
The founder each and every time.
Low returns or higher risk?
Higher risk.
Data or instinct?
Instinct.
Diversification or concentration?
Concentration.
Investing early or waiting for proof?
Early.
Love it. Woman after my own heart. But I get that not everyone feels comfortable with it yet. But I say for anybody who is interested in investing in startups, just start learning more. Start going to some of the networks, putting yourself out there.
And hit me up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Like, as I said, this whole sector is something that I love. So I've been really looking forward to having this conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.